that. So I'm recording the session, and it will be transcribed to a certain extent, not word for word, but I'll be making notes, and I'll be sending those on to Kate, and Kate Helgren can get those minutes and notes out to the other instructors. So we have a series of these mentorship calls coming up. I'm dealing with the first topic, which is final projects, which can be both fun and terrifying at the same time to our students, especially if you're new to the Florida Master Naturalist program. I've worked with some students over the years, especially the greener students, the newer ones, and when they find out that they have to do a final project, you just see this look of sheer terror in their eyes sometimes. But there are ways of dealing with that and making it enjoyable for both the instructor, the lead instructor, as well as the participants. And we'll come up with those strategies. Our next conference call will be October 13th, and Gene Murphy will be talking about Florida Master Naturalist chapter development. And you call in basically at the same time, 3 o'clock, using the same dial-up number. And I'm sure Kate will be sending out information about that. So before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge that I am not operating in a vacuum here in St. Lucie County. That's where I'm located in Fort Pierce. I have a very strong instructional team that I work with, and we've helped develop some of the techniques that we'll talk about today. Certainly, Amanda Thompson needs to be acknowledged. Ren Underwood, Mary White. We have many Master Naturalist instructors that have been involved with the development of the strategy that we're going to talk about. Everybody knows if you're an instructor or an associate or an assistant instructor, you've already been made aware that having final projects is a requirement. And the types of projects differ based on the student's interest and the interest of the instructors. And basically, I'm just going to be sharing with you some of the ways that we've done it and worked it out here in St. Lucie. So I've got my little list here of some of the bullet points that I wanted to go through. And basically, to start off, we used to do free-for-all. When I first started doing the Master Naturalist instructing, I was an instructor back in 2001, and when we first started doing this, it was kind of like a free-for-all. We would have the students in the first night. We would tell them that final projects had to be done in a class. You saw a lot of people that had this look of sheer terror in their eyes, and then you told them that by a certain date they had to tell you what the project was, and they had to present the last day of class. So we've pretty much steered away from doing that with the instructional team that I'm working with, and we're doing more structured final projects. And basically what that means is that there's basically an outline of what is expected, the need that's being addressed, what's expected, and the type of outcome that's being expected. And the type of outcome might be a classroom presentation. People might be creating workbooks and things like that. So a structured final project is very different than a free-for-all. And that might make you wonder, well, since it's structured, does that mean that it has to be a serious thing? Are people going to be, maybe not having quite so much fun? Are they going to be doing a lot more textbook, serious research sort of stuff? And the answer is, we've done both. Some of the most eventful and memorable final projects that we've done have been fun things that we had one student who was graduating from all 3 of our core modules, and we asked him to research the Florida skunk ape. And we just kind of threw it out at him. And we knew that the guy had a real personality that went along with the task. And he made our final project day very memorable because he actually visited the skunk ape or the swamp ape museum and took some photographs that looked like swamp ape and just basically talked about the mythos of the whole concept. Another fun one that comes to my mind is, we hear a lot of myths and sometimes misconceptions, and one of them is dealing with wax myrtles and how, the word wax myrtle came about. And, I've always heard that you can make wax myrtle berry candles and, you can make wax with the berries that are harvested and all of that. So we tossed it out to the students and asked them if there was a group that would be available and interested, and actually exploring that to see if, what it took in reality to make a candle. And it turned out to be extremely challenging for them, but sure enough, by the last day of class, they came up with a tea candle that was made out of wax myrtle berries, and shared the whole process. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a serious program. It can be kind of a fun thing like we just mentioned. Now, we do have some students that take on a little bit more serious program. We've had some people that have surveyed feral hog hunters and land managers to find out what sort of the best way that they have found to manage feral hogs. And that particular student, Joanna Huffman, actually had her work published, and she received awards. We received awards from all over the place. So, there's a lot that goes along with it. But basically, it's up to the instructor and the students to help design the program. Then we have this third sort of category. So we have the fun, and then we have the serious program, the projects, and then we have service projects. And basically what a service project is, let's say you're working in a state park, and we might say Savannah State Park, which is in Port St. Lucie.
That's a good one, Ken.
Yeah, Brian, you know this one. And let's say that they have some problem with an invasive plant like Melaleuca, which, there are still pockets of it. The savannas is so huge that it's almost, impossible to eradicate all of it. But we had one student that just happened to be in the landscape industry, and he specialized in natural areas management. So we basically pitched it to him to go ahead and do a project, a service project, to remove the Melaleuca out of a particular pocket of the savannas. He did it. He did a great job at it, and then he presented the process to the students. So, these are the sort of things that we've done. Now, when we develop the scope of work for these programs, these projects, I have a team of instructors that I work with here locally. And what we'll do is we'll bounce ideas off of each other. And we'll pick probably the top 5 or 6 concepts that we would really like to have explored during our class. And they're all relevant to the module. So in an uplands class, they might be dealing with whatever it might be that's invasive reptiles or something. In a coastal area, they might be working with sea turtle issues. So we try to base the project types on the type of module that's taught. And then we work out that scope of work where we give the students an actual written explanation of what the scope of work is, and we tell them a little bit about the background, and we have all the resource information there so they can look it up on their own. And then we basically outline what we expect and would like out of that final project. So we work up these scopes of work, and then the first day of class, we pitch it to the students. We're basically asking them, we're inviting them to come in and work on our structured final projects. And by far, the students love the idea of doing these structured final projects because it gives them an outline of the expectation of what we expect for the presentation. So, but not everybody is required to do it. We do have the individual ones, the individual projects that are not structured. And so we basically pitch it to the students, and we give them a week to go ahead and make their decision and sign up. And it's worked out very well for us. I've tried giving the structured final project scope of works out in advance, and it seems to work for some people, but they really start thinking about the class seriously when they get to class the first night. So, getting that scope of work is really helpful. And then, as far as the project management goes, back way, when we first started doing these, it was up to the lead instructor to basically be on top of every single student's final project. And if you are working a full-time job and you come in and teach the class for a few hours a week, and you've got 20 to 25 students, some of them with their own individual final projects, it becomes more challenging to manage the final projects than it does to actually teach the class. So we had to deal with a way to make these final projects, the management of them, doable for the instructor. And the goal was to improve the quality of the program and improve the experience enrich the experience for the students and make it manageable for the lead instructor. So some of the things that we've done, we have a lot of students that have gone through the program all over the state of Florida. And here in St. Lucie County, we've got a nice pool of students that have graduated through all 3 of the core modules, and many of them have gone through the special topics and become advanced master naturalists. So you get to know these students pretty well. And the top students that we become aware of and feel would be good working with our current students, we invite them to come back as an assistant instructor. Even if they don't have a degree in biology or anything like that, we invite them to become final project managers. We ask them to get the assistant instructor certification through Kate and the Master Naturalist chapter, the state office. And so this way they have, the background of the management and all that. And then we basically pitch the projects, these structured final projects, to these final project managers. So I might have a project on, I'll just take a look at one. We had some students in my last class that we pitched the idea of having them do the Python challenge. We're concerned about pythons and invasive reptiles here in St. Lucie County, being part of the South Florida ecosystem where these invasive reptiles are pretty much going rampant in areas. So we wanted to have students involved in the Python challenge. And we worked up the scope of work, and that basically involved having the students sign up for the class. They had to go through the actual Python wrangling part where they had to get down there and wrangle pythons. They had to take some online coursework, and then I gave them the option of participating in the challenge. Well, that was a lot of work, and I couldn't take on all of that as the lead instructor. So I asked my co-lead instructor, who is a graduate of the Master Naturalist program in St. Lucie County, and she's actually worked her way up to the Natural Resource Manager with St. Lucie County Environmental Resources. I asked Amanda Thompson to be the final project manager, and she stepped up, and she had 4 students that really kicked some booty on that Python challenge. And the way it basically worked out is we worked with the students to get them assigned to Amanda. Amanda had a clear understanding of what the scope of work was, and then she met with those teams of that team of 4 students independently of class or during breaks and things like that, and basically helped serve as a guide to get them through it. So there really was no time at all where the students felt as if they were floundering on their own, as if they didn't have the resources available to fulfill the final project, and it really gave us a good foundation for that project. So it was a Friday night we pitched it to them. By Saturday they had time to talk about it. By Sunday they were so excited about the final project with the Python challenge that by that Sunday, which was not a day in class, they were actually down in Juno Beach going through the Python wrangling, where they have the students, working with the Fish and Wildlife folks, learning about the invasive reptiles and wrangling pythons. They shot a video, they created a video, they presented that to the class the last day during final project presentations, and so this is the sort of thing that we've done. It's been really exciting for the students. One thing that I have down here is when they're working on these structured final project teams, I don't personally share their contact information. As an instructor, I keep that guarded and protected, right down to the email addresses. When I email my students, I use blind copy. So they see my email address, they'll see the email addresses of the final project managers, all of which are assistant master naturalist instructors and program graduates. but it's up to them to determine within their teams how much personal information they want to exchange. If they want to share email addresses, that's great. If they want to share phone numbers, it's up to them to determine that. Some of these teams meet at their own homes. We don't give them the students' addresses. They work that out on their own. And it's a level of privacy that some students appreciate just because they happen to be private people. So, sharing contact information, I do guard that contact information pretty heavily, and I ask them to make their own decisions about that. Now, the next thing that I have down is dealing with reporting time on the project. What we've noticed over the last few years is, we survey the master naturalists. They fill out a data sheet. It's required. They have to turn that data sheet in when they give their final project. They have to turn in the number of hours on their project, the contact numbers, if they taught classes. We have one person that taught all of South Florida FPNL field crews about invasive reptile management. She recorded all those contacts. It was hundreds and hundreds, almost thousands of contact numbers, which are all reportable to UF. So what we found is the students were putting in almost an equal amount of time into their final projects, if not more. It is not unusual for people to put in 100 hours of work into their final project, and it becomes very enlightening as the lead instructor to see how much work the students put into it. So, they get into this classroom experience. They know they have to put 40 hours in. 2 field trips are required and all that other stuff. They know that. But when it comes to the final projects, a lot of them really do put in a huge amount of work into that. Now, I have down something about the IRB2. If you're an extension agent, and I don't know who's on the call here, if you're an extension agent working in the state of Florida and you have your students doing any sort of research that it might involve people, then you have to go through an independent review board. And to give you an example of what we've done, that one student that I talked about, Joanna Huffman, she surveyed the quite a few of the land managers in South Florida and asked them about their feral hog management practices and what worked and what didn't work for them. And as part of that, she had to make sure that the IRB was complete. So basically there was a review process at the University of Florida to make sure that everything was within ethics, that basically all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed before she actually interacted with any of these natural resource managers. And pretty much when you go to get anything published, they might ask if you've actually done that and followed those protocols. So, there are times if you're an extension agent where your students have to go through that IRB process. And it's no big deal. It's online. If you need to, you can contact me, and I'll help you through it. I also have down plagiarism. That's something that we're aware of, for students that are taking the degree classes. They have to be aware that they can't steal other people's work. But when they're doing final projects, one of the things that I stress to them is that they really need to make sure that if they're using references in a PowerPoint, or if they're creating a workbook or something, that they really have the references down pat. If they're taking photographs, I had one team of students, Adam Dunham and Carl Mangino. They did a butterfly survey of paleo hammock, and they did just a great project. And what they did is they took a lot of their own photos and they included it in their PowerPoint presentation. And the great thing about it for me is I saw who got the credits, whether it was their work or not. And stealing things is certainly not something that we should condone. And if the students put in the work, they ought to be able to at least show that they can take credit for it. I have had some students that have done butterfly field guides and things like that. And this is where I kind of became aware of the whole issue of plagiarism with it possibly being an issue with master naturalists. They created field guides for some of the natural areas in St. Lucie County. There was not a single picture that had photo credits on it. There was not any information at all about what they used as a reference. So, it became very clear to me that we had to have that discussion. Did they take the pictures themselves, or did they swipe it off some website somewhere? So, just at least have that sort of discussion. I recommend you have that discussion with your students and do it the first day of class when you talk about final projects. Now, it sounds all good and everything doing these projects the way that I'm describing, but of course there are students that sometimes have a hard time getting into the scheme of things, and I don't want to call them trouble students, but they need a little extra attention. Now, as the lead instructor, you're kind of hovering above all these teams working on these final projects, and you pick up pretty quickly which students are floundering. And when I've noticed that sort of thing happen, I can really get in there quickly, talk to the final project manager, and then talk to the student and find out if there's some solution. And sometimes it involves me actually having to remove the student from a team and working on a different scope of work, a different project entirely with that student. We had to do that in one of the last coastal courses that I taught, and the teams were happy that the student was removed, and the student was very happy because she had a project that she really felt passionate about, and it was her baby, and she did a great job on it. So, being a lead instructor, you have to be able to identify that, and that's just one way of dealing with it. Another thing that we do, these are all adult learners. If they're creating a final project, and if you want to showcase it someplace, you really should get their permission. One thing, it's real easy, just a piece of paper. I give Ken Joelle, Amanda Thompson, Ren Underwood, whoever, permission to showcase my Master Naturalist final project, signed student's name and the date. And that gives you clear permission to post their projects on a website. And I always, when I do get permission to post it on the website, I always include the student's email address. So if somebody who sees the website needs to contact the student, they can reach them through email. But I never just assume that we have rights to use the final projects that are generated. These are adult learners. If they decide to create a book and it turns out to be a great final project, well, so be it. That student might actually decide to not share it with anybody else, or maybe include it as part of another publishable for sale product. So I never just assume that I have permission to do anything with these final projects. Now, when it comes to actually presenting the final projects, the Master Naturalist modules, the instructor information, they recommend giving at least 1 week of gap time so the students can get in there and really work on those final projects. And I strongly support that. The next module that I'm teaching, we're teaching Friday and Saturdays for an entire month, and then we have that 1 week of gap time off from class, and then that following week, they're there on a Saturday presenting their final projects. Students really need to have that time to be able to step back from class and get the work done for that final project. And of course, it gives them time also to work with their final project managers to give them a little extra attention. Mary White, who's on the conference call with us, it's worked out nice with her because the adult learners that she's had, she's been able to meet with them in informal settings like at Panera or something like that, and they've been able to spend a little bit of time talking about any difficulties they've encountered and things like that, and how to really make the project pop as a winner. So with the time allocation, well, that's not written in stone. The instructor workbook recommends a good 20 minutes. Sometimes if I have students, like I was talking earlier about that Python challenge training, I gave that team of 4 students 35 minutes. And that worked out really well for them because each of them had the ability to step up and share their portion of the project. We had somebody did the PowerPoint. We had one person that made the video. We had somebody that made an actual Python wrangling kit. We had somebody that made documents. So it gave each of them an opportunity to step up and to share what they did as part of the project. Now, with the final project day, I also make sure that I include enough break time. So I usually try to include at least 2 15 to 20 minute breaks. And what that does is it gives you an opportunity to have a little bit of buffer there. So if you have one student team that maybe has to take a little extra time, it doesn't rob somebody else of time. So really having those 2 blocks of a good solid 15 to 20 minutes per block of break time really works out good. And it also gives the students an opportunity to transition from one project to the next. You might find that some students have pictures and things that need to be hung up. We've seen it all. We have one student in one of my last classes that had her class. She was an elementary school teacher, and she had all of her students draw pictures of certain things, and she had to set it out. So getting that block of break time is really important. And I think sometimes as instructors, we tend to maybe cut into break time. I really try not to do that. And then, of course, evaluation. Now, the master naturalists are never given a grade for their participation. So we had to develop a way of creating an evaluation system that kind of fell into the same sort of feel as the rest of the class. So what we did is we created an anonymous feedback form. Each student in class has enough of these anonymous feedback forms for every other student in class. And basically we just lay a stack of them on each of the tables.
You're breaking up. Couldn't hear that last part.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is a little bit better now?
Yes, start again about the evaluation.
Yeah. So
yes. I lost you at each student.
Okay. I'm a New Yorker from South Florida. I talk fast. So I'll.
It's an electronic. It's garbled.
Yeah. I'm also working out in the middle of nowhere. So what I'll do is I'll try to talk a little bit slower and louder. So the way we handle evaluation is the lead instructor and the assistant and the associate instructors, we do not give grades to the students for their final projects. That's kind of within the theme of the rest of the coursework. But what we have done is we've developed an anonymous feedback form. And each table where each of the student workstations, each of the desks, has a stack of these anonymous feedback forms. And of course, being anonymous, they do not put their name on it. They put the title of the presentation, the presenter's name, and then they're basically asked 5 things. Number 1, did the presenter stay within the time constraints? And we added that to this form because there are some people that if you give them 25 minutes to present, will take an hour. And it's better if they hear it from the students, their fellow students, that they took too long than from the instructor. I will, of course, tell them if they do, but that is reflected within the anonymous feedback form. What I do before the final project teams are presented, I go up to the chalkboard, I write their names, I write their project, I write the time when they start the project. They know exactly how much time is given to them, allocated to them, and then I write down what time they actually stop presenting their final project. So there's no guess as to how much time was allocated to the teams and how much time they actually used. And the students, they basically say, did they stay within time constraints or not? And they say simply yes or no. The second thing is dealing with team projects. The students are asked, does it look when they're presenting as if all the work was shared equally? If there are some people that look like they didn't put any effort into the final project, when the majority of the students on that team really, sweated it out and did a lot of work. It shows up right here. The other thing is, did you learn any new information? If so, what? And the students are given an opportunity to say whether or not the presentation on the final project was actually something that the students learned something new from. The fourth thing on that feedback form is, what did you like about the presentation? The fifth thing on the form is suggestions for improvement. And then we give them the opportunity to write whatever is needed on the back. Now, it's human nature. We all know that sometimes you have people that are heartless and cruel. By far the majority of people that we work with in Master Naturalists, they love being there, they're excited about the work, but then every once in a blue moon, you get somebody in there that might have a beef or a grudge with another student, or just as heartless with their ability to give productive feedback. So when these anonymous feedback forms are turned in, they're not turned in to me, they're turned in to one of the assistant or associate or other lead instructors in the classroom. That particular person has the task of reading through all these anonymous feedback forms and picking out anything that might be cruel. Plain and simple, if it's something that's inappropriate, it gets weeded out, and the student, the final project presenter, never sees that. Likewise, I never know who's given that rotten suggestion for improvement or been cruel. You kind of figure it out, though. But and then those feedback forms, once they've been reviewed, right there during class on that last day, once they're reviewed, they're given back to that final project team before they leave, and they get a chance to look through all the comments from their peers in class. I do not, nor do the other instructors in class, provide that critique. Their fellow students do that. Now, I say that, and sometimes there are projects that are done that look like PowerPoints that were used at a board meeting 3 years ago. I have absolutely no problem talking to that student on the aside and asking what that was all about. If it just looks like something that was not what I expected, or maybe minimal to no effort went into it, I will certainly talk to the student about it. So with that being said, celebrating achievements. Our students have been through a lot. When they get done with our training class, they have gone through a lot of learning and these field experiences, and it might be the most studying they've done in decades. Some of them may not, even be high school graduates. So you kind of have to remember to take time to celebrate those achievements. Give them an opportunity to unwind. So on that last day of class, the teams give their final project presentations. The anonymous feedback forms go back to the students, and then everybody kind of lets their hair down and has time to relax. And in my particular area, the team that I work with, we go up to the local vineyard and we just knock a couple of bottles back and do some wine tasting. Of course, all of that is off the record. We do not have as an official part of the class. I personally am not on the clock when I do that. It's usually on a Saturday, and it's usually well after class. And it gives the students an opportunity to unwind and socialize. So that's pretty much how we deal with final projects in St. Lucie County. Once again, I have a great team of fellow instructors here that have helped us develop this regime of doing final projects. And Amanda Thompson, Ren Underwood, Mary White. I mean, I've got probably about 6 or 7 assistant instructors, all of which are program graduates. And then I have some fellow lead instructors in the area, some associate instructors. We all, seem to work pretty well together on these sort of things. And I think all of us who have been instructors for a while, when you have enough graduates that go through the program, you start hearing, we term this master naturalitis. You start hearing what now? Okay, so we've put all this time into studying the master naturalist program. What's the next thing? What now? Getting the ones that are really good with people, the ones that you see that have the potential and the promise to be final project managers, get them moving onto your instructional team. And it's been extremely successful. I'm telling you, it's one of the best things that we ever did is getting the re-engagements of the graduates. Now, I've got a list here. I'm gonna go through just some of the projects that some of our students have done. We had, let's see here, we had the butterfly survey of Paleo Hammock. Now, Paleo Hammock is a St. Lucie County preserve. It's absolutely beautiful. There's not a lot of mosquito control practice going on out there, and we have a lot of butterfly activity out there. So we had two students, Adam Dunham and Carl Mangino. Carl is now an assistant instructor, by the way. But when he was a student, we asked him to go and do a butterfly survey at Paleo Hammock. And Mary White, who is on the phone with us, was their final project manager. The reason I selected Mary White as the final project manager for this particular project is because I knew Mary had expertise with photography. She's a nature lover. She's got a gentle, good soul to work well with others. And she is very clear in instructions. She works for the sheriff's department during her normal time, during her workday. So she's very good at communicating with people. But she has that expertise with photography. So it just made sense to ask her to be the final project manager for the butterfly survey at Paleo Hammock Preserve. So they all went out to the preserve, they brought their cameras, and they took a lot of photographs, and then came back, and then they did the identification. And they created a PowerPoint presentation, which was loaded onto the internet. So when people go to visit Paleo Hammock, they can download this presentation and actually, identify the butterflies that might be out there. Let's see here. What else do I have?
And how do you evaluate accuracy of the final projects? I mean, if somebody's doing a butterfly identification, or if they're doing a brochure, a trail guide, or something like that.
I try to.
We're sitting in class for the last day. I may not know the exact number of days it takes for diamondback terrapin egg to hatch.
Yeah.
How is the accuracy of materials for public use to be arranged?
Okay, that's a good question, and I leave it up to the final project managers and their expertise to help flag down any questionable issues. But with anything that's done, academically, unless you have a really solid peer review program, things fall through the cracks. I mean, we see it every once in a while with something in, master naturalist modules and things like that in the old workbooks. All that has been corrected, by the way. And so, yeah, we're assuming that all of it's done. So when we post the stuff online, so like for example, this Paleo Hammock butterfly guide, I put a disclaimer on the website saying, just alerting to people to let them know that this was a student project and that it is not peer-reviewed University of Florida information. So, we try to give that disclaimer. I mean, things happen, there are some publications we've actually had published. We had a Living in Florida publication. I mentioned Mary White earlier. She was the project manager for this Living in Florida publication. We had that peer-reviewed. We had a graphic artist work with the teams to put that together. They received awards for it. It was peer-reviewed by PhDs at the University of Florida. So, so basically, by the end of class, they had a good solid draft, and then it was up to me to take that draft, get that final peer review, that looking over by the experts at UF, and then having them sign off saying, yes, this is a solid piece of work. I should say that that particular publication, I actually received print. It was so well done that I received a grant to print those. So we have crates of them, and when the master naturalists are maybe working at a local nature festival, they know that that resource is available, and they will bring stacks of that to the event and give those final projects out. And it's pretty sharp. I have Mary. Mary, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Mary, do you have anything you want to say about that particular project you worked on?
Actually, the way that project was conceptualized is that, and I think it might have been Ren Underwood, and I think she as well. I think she had a request from a local realtor who was looking for something, data and some information with photos that could be used for newcomers to the area. So when we talked about it, we thought, well, that would be kind of cool. I think initially they were looking for something they could put on their website, but as it turned out, it is available as a PDF, and we actually do have the QR code. So when we're out at a booth event or something, we have the QR code that links to that publication, so people can actually put their cell phone up to it and download it, and then they can read it at home at their leisure or print it out. But that's how that started out. Ren referred her to us, and it ended up being a final project.
Mary,
And actually, the other thing is too. I'm sorry. We did have some printed, and we talked to the county commission about it, and they were willing to assist with that in the future when the need does arise. It was just with the printing and to get it through Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah,
what period of time was required to not only develop and create that project, but to get the peer review done? It's not something you can do in a 4-week class.
no,
It was done within the class parameter.
it was done within that class.
We had a group of 4 people plus myself working on it.
And as the lead instructor for the overall program, I kind of had to crack the whip a little bit towards the end. We had some students that, all the written information the draft of the written information was done, but we had one student that was, a little bit slower than the rest of the team at getting the actual photographs that were going to be used turned in on time. And so I basically had to come in and say that if you do not get this done, these are the pictures. I'm using my pictures in this, and I'm sending that to the graphic artist to have them put that together. So as soon as I said that, she got all those pictures in on time. And so
They used their own photos. It was the students' photos that were used. And it's a large publication. It's, what would you say, 8 by 10, 8.5 by 11?
yeah, it's
1, 2, 3, 4 pages.
yeah, and
Front and back.
it's pretty nice. It can it can be downloaded as a PDF, so you don't even have to have a hard copy. But that's just one example, and we received national awards for that particular final project. Some of the final projects that we've had that maybe haven't been quite as successful as we'd hoped. We had one student that was trying to take a photo of crabs as they emerged from a crab hole. And, as the lead instructor, I was working with the final project manager, which I'm talking about this because I know I've got Mary on the phone. She was the final project manager for this particular student. And he basically set it in his mind that he was going to sit at a crab hole in a mosquito impoundment until he got a picture of a crab completely out of that crab hole. And Mary and I both kind of scratched our heads, and we were both somewhat amused, but yet we told him that this was going to be an extremely difficult task. So he was made very well aware that it was going to be very hard for him to get that photo. One of the other projects that we had, marine microplastics. It's been something, this is Marine Microplastic Month. Dr. Maya McGuire in St. Johns County is heading that project up. And when I did my last coastal module, I knew I had something that I wanted to get this marine microplastics project going here in St. Lucie County. We have the Indian River Lagoon, the St. Lucie River, two estuaries of extreme importance. And we knew that we had this potential resource available. So we pitched it, the Marine Microplastics Project, to the class, and we had two students, Bob Calhoun and Cheryl McCormick, step up to take on that marine microplastics. And I invited Leroy Cresswell, our local Sea Grant agent. I invited him, who, by the way, is also an associate instructor. I invited him to be the final project manager, and he worked with them outside of class and did all of the marine microplastics monitoring. They worked with Dr. Pasco Avery at the University of Florida and used the microscopes and things like that and got all the data sent in to Maya, Dr. Maya McGuire. So, these are very deep, rich projects of varying intensity as far as the effort that has to go into them. As a lead instructor, there is no way that I would be able to do this sort of depth of project on my own. I really have to rely on the final project managers to help make them successful. So these are all some of the things that we have implemented in St. Lucie County. I want to mention the next mentor program is October 13th from 3 to 4. And that will be Gene Murphy talking about chapter formation. What I'd like to do right now is open it up for questions and answer. And I don't know how many people we have on the phone right now.
Ken?
Yes.
Ken, this is Kate. I would really like to have the people who are on the phone just quickly say their names and the counties that they're in, so I have an idea of who's attending. Okay. Is that all right? Jamie Reynolds, Charlotte County.
That was Jamie. Jamie who?
Reynolds. Yep.
Jamie Reynolds. Jamie Reynolds.
Strawbridge, Jacksonville, Duval County. Great, thanks, Beth.
Jim Buckner, Harris County.
That was Jim.
From Arm County.
Jim Buckner.
Marion County. Yeah.
Marion.
Donna Engel, Leon County.
Please
Leon
don't-
County.
All right, wait a minute.
I'm getting this.
Hold on, guys. So before Donna, who was in Brevard?
Brandon Smith.
Hi, Brandon. Okay, so after Donna, who was?
Will Shuffle, Leon County.
Hi, well, okay.
Karen Solms from Dade County.
Karen Toby.
Karen Solms from Miami-Dade County. Jackie Ruffley from Orange County. Amanda Thompson, St. Lucie County.
Hey, Amanda, I was just talking about you.
And Mary White, St. Lucie County. Savannah Berry in Levy County. Pam McDonald in Duval County.
Pam
McDonald from Polk County. Karen Toby from Duval.
And who?
Carol's here too from Duval.
Oh, hi, Carol.
Hi, Ken.
So, who was the other instructor from Duval?
It was
Carol.
I know, before you, Carol.
It was Savannah.
Karen Toby.
Karen Toby.
Karen Toby, thanks.
I had Savannah. Was that somebody?
Yes, Savannah Barron.
Was that Barron? Okay.
Barry.
Oh, Barry. Thank you. And then we had Brian Weinstein on earlier.
You still do, Leon
Oh,
County?
hey, Brian. Do we have anybody else?
Gene Murphy, Duval County.
Chad
Oh.
Truxell from Volusia County.
We had Gene, and who was from Volusia?
Chad Truxell?
Chad?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Volusia County.
Yeah.
Okay. Did we get everybody?
What a great group of instructors, guys. I
Hey.
mean, you're the inaugural group to attend this mentor call. And I do want to, just while you're here, I just want to really thank you for all you do for the Florida Master Naturalist Program and the constituents in your area. So you're dynamite to attend this call, and some of you are new, and some of you are seasoned, and hats off for wanting to learn some new stuff for your program. So that's great.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, thank you guys for doing it.
I have, there's one person on the phone that, Amanda Thompson joined us, and I mentioned her earlier in the, at the beginning of the presentation. I work with a very strong instructional team here in St. Lucie County. Amanda Thompson is a co-lead instructor with the Environmental Resources Department. I should point out that Amanda started out as a Master Naturalist student. Then she graduated, became an instructor, and worked her way into the Environmental Resources Department in management there. So, Amanda, is there anything that you would like to share about final projects?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. The only thing my suggestion would be is, and we're all probably already doing this, is just being supportive as possible to all of these people, because their skill levels vary, and sometimes, their project may not seem like a big thing to us, but they're all working, they have families, they, have to try and get this done as well. So I find that you have happy students, even if the project isn't quite what you're looking for, if you can be there and support them as much as possible.
Thank you. So
Here.
I'd like to open the floor up for questions, and it's real hard when you're doing conference calls because people talk over each other. So if you don't mind, kind of please being patient if you have a question. We'll take the first question if you have one. No questions? Oh, that makes it easy.
I'll step in there. This is Donna Hinkle.
Hi.
You said you were going to write up the notes and send it out. About how long before you think those will be sent out?
I'm recording this session right now, and if I have time, I'll go back to my office and start the transcription. I'd like to get it done by tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think that'll work.
And if you send that to me, I won't get it out until Monday.
Okay. So expect it soon. I might actually be able to email this audio clip, but it's an app and I've never used it before, so we'll have to see if that actually does what I think it should do. So, any other questions? Mary White, is there anything you'd like to mention before we leave? Nope.
I just think that when Ken was talking about structured projects, we do that as a rule. However, if we do have a student who already has a project in mind and it's a viable project, we let them go with it and run with it. Some students prefer to work independently, and we have done that as well as the group structured project.
Yeah, and when we find that happens, we still assign that student to a final project manager. Yeah. So.
Okay, and I have one more kind of housekeeping
Okay.
bit, Ken, before you potentially sign off. I had sent out to all of the instructors a survey asking if they wanted to lead a mentor call, and I got a little bit of feedback from two individuals actually. That was definitive, but I would like it if you all thought about. What I'll probably end up doing is sending that out through the instructor listserv again, so that we can get feedback. We're going to probably have these mentors calls the second Thursday of every month. but I think that they are potentially extremely valuable. And if folks wanted to lead one, then that would be great, so that we can be consistent in this offering. So I'll send that survey out again, and then perhaps at least the 20 or so folks who are on this call can have feedback. So please, anything that I send out through the instructor listserv is usually pretty worthwhile. So if you get something through the instructor listserv, please be aware of it and give feedback when solicited. So thanks.
Oh, and Kate, you're wonderful, by the way. I've enjoyed working with you on the Master Naturalist Board. And by the way, we do have some openings on the Master Naturalist Board. We have some directors' positions. If you have any interest at all in providing leadership on a statewide level, please submit your name to Kate. And all it has to be is just an email address. And we've got I think we've got like 3 directors' positions. I think it was North Central and some others. So
we have vacancies in North Central, Central, Southwest, and also actually, because if you are an officer, then that doesn't fill a region. So also in the Central West region and the Northwest region. So there are actually there are 5 different regions that need filling. And so if you're from the Northwest, North Central, Central West, or Southwest, there are officers in some of those regions, but not general board members. So it's great. We have a conference call. Is it every other month?
yeah, I think that's about right. And
every other month, and it's a big program, so there's a lot to talk about, and it usually takes about 2 hours every other month, and it's a great group of people. So if you're interested in that, but you've got to be interested in contributing more than just the 2 hours every other month. There's stuff to be done for our state,
like these conference calls. So with that being said, it's now 4:00. I appreciate everybody participating. If you have any questions, you can get in touch with me through Kate. I think my email address, my contact information was not on the flyer we sent out. You can get through to me through Kate, and some of you already have my email address. All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.